What's up, Dad Bod Nation? Dad Bod Steve here with another podcast, and we have a great story. This is a personal friend of mine who has come to my school multiple times to talk about her life, her struggles, and how she is dealing with it now and how she has moved on. I want you guys to give a welcome to Portia Louder. Portia, thank you so much for coming today.
It's great to be here, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Of course, we're so happy to have you. If you want to go ahead and go introduce yourself to the audience and let them know about your background.
Yeah. So my name's Portia Louder, and I have had I don't know if they're unique experiences because I met a lot of other people that have also had some of these experiences, but I have struggled with addiction, spent some time in federal prison. Also, I am a mother, a daughter, a photographer, a community member. So I know when I was in prison, I felt like I was so defined by this one experience. And so it was important for me to start to like recognize that I was more than just that moment in time. But um I didn't start out a felon. I wasn't born into that. So I can go back a little bit if you want to give some history and how I got this comment this morning on social media. A guy said, "How did you end up in prison and you don't even have any tattoos?" I said, "Is that a prerequisite? Like, did I?" I don't think that the two are connected, but I thought that was funny. So, yeah.
That is, and I can attest to you, you do have a unique experience in life because even though some people have also experienced this, you and them are a
Mhm.
minority of people who've experienced these things, right? It is not a common thing. But what's cool is you can relate to so many people that have gone through these struggles who do feel like they're alone, right? They don't they don't feel like they have someone they can look up to until they see someone else who's gone through the same thing. So definitely have some experiences that I've never done, right? And I've never gone through, and that's why I love to talk about it.
Yeah.
And like I said before, so the audience knows she has come to my school multiple times and told her story to the kids at my school. The kids at my school are in group homes; they are incarcerated or through DCFS. And every time Portia comes, the kids just melt in her hands. They love this story. So, Portia, go ahead and start from the beginning about growing up, how family life was when you were younger, kind of where everything started getting the ball rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I am the oldest of seven children, and I grew up
Wow.
on the outskirts of a small town. My parents were really hard workers. I consider them unique. My mom was like this real super hippie lady. Like she liked all things outdoors and natural. No rules, no boundaries. Like we pretty much decided what we wanted to do, including if we wanted to go to school or not. It was up to us. So my dad had some pretty serious trauma. He was a Vietnam vet. He'd been shot twice, so he had PTSD. And he was a hard worker. He'd get up early. We had animals, kind of lived out in the country, had a side business, a regular day job. And then my mom was also a photographer. So my parents were both hard workers. I think for me, I really started to struggle in school. And I think my first struggle was probably relationships, boys needing attention when I was about 12 or 13. Any kind of structure made me uncomfortable. So school was difficult for me, but I liked the social side of school. When I was 13, my mom pulled all the other kids out of school. They didn't want to go anymore. And so she put them in kind of a neighbor private school. A neighbor of ours was willing to teach them how to read, and they did more creative things. But I already at that point wanted to be, social, but I was struggling with the schoolwork. And then I really started to get into relationships. And my teenage years were difficult. By the time I was 17 years old, I was pregnant with my first child. I moved out of my parents' home, moved into low income apartments and with my son. And I really just thought my future would be great if I could just find someone to marry me. Like, that's what I need, I just need a man, somebody to take care of me. And yeah, it never works out. I ended up meeting somebody that was 10 years older than me. So looking back, I'm like, he was 28 and I was 18. Like, it's a pretty good stretch for, for that age. And he made me the offer that he would marry me and take care of me. So we got married, and it wasn't going great. I didn't really have the skills to be married. And right about that time, my dad got transferred to Salt Lake. So if you're familiar with Utah, Salt Lake is the city in Utah. And I had been living in the country. I had never been to Salt Lake. So my life was pretty small. And I came up to visit my parents with my son. And I remember the first time I came to Salt Lake City, I was like, oh my heck, I don't have to stay in that town. Like there's a place for me. I can leave. I can start something new. And what I thought maybe my husband and I would move up, and I told him I thought I could get a job, and he said, "I'm never leaving this town. You know, we aren't even getting along. Let's just get divorced, and you can go live with your parents." So you can see our commitment wasn't very firm. Um, we ended up getting divorced. It took about a week. So it was, the marriage and divorce both were really quick. We'd been married about a year, and I found out I moved up with my parents. I got a job as a photographer. And literally, not long after I got up there, I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. So I called him to tell him, and he said he didn't really want to be a part of my life. I remember during that period, I know it was hard. This morning I was thinking about it and I was thinking, man, a lot of my life has been really hard, you know?
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah,
I mean, that's rough. And you said before, you said, "Oh yeah, I wasn't good at the marriage thing." Hey, 20 years of being married, I'm still learning stuff right now,
okay.
and so it's a lifelong learning pathway, right? It's not
Right.
something that you just pick up right away. So,
Yeah,
so sorry to interrupt you on that, but yeah, go ahead. So you found out you're pregnant. You just moved back in with your parents.
right. So I'm living with my parents, and I remember feeling very lonely, like just really sad during that time. And my parents were members of the LDS faith, Christian faith. And I had been not active in the church at all, but my dad told me that I might want to consider going to church. My parents know I'm stubborn, so they're not going to try to tell me what to do. So, any parents out there, it's like, yeah, my dad knew how to deal with me he was pretty smart with me. And I said, Dad, I don't want to go to church. I don't want anything to do with that. And he goes, Portia, you're smarter than that. This could help you, and you haven't even tried it yet. And so I do remember that I started reading scriptures at night. I felt a lot of comfort. And when my daughter was born, my dad said, Hey, let me take her to church and give her a blessing. So I went to church, and I remember looking around at all the other people. They seemed happy. They were all married with kids. And I thought, I just need to get married. I'll be okay if I just get married. So I ended up, after my daughter was born, started dating again. And, you know, I wasn't very good at the dating thing either. And I ended up getting pregnant again. So I was 23 years old. I had two children. My children didn't have a father in their life. I didn't get any child support, and I was pregnant with my third. And I remember being scared and saying my first real prayer because I knew. I mean, I don't know if it was just that I was a little bit older, but I knew my children deserve better than this. I already have two kids that don't have a father, and I just felt scared. And so when I prayed about it, I felt a strong impression that I should place my son for adoption. And I remember telling my dad, and my dad's like this strong guy, and he's like, Portia, you can do this. I believe in you. My mom, she's really kind and compassionate. She thought it would be too hard. She's like, why don't you just let me raise him? And I said, Mom, we're not even that good at raising kids, you know? My mom's like, she's like, well, she allowed me to do what I wanted to do. I always had. So I found a family. They were great. I remember meeting them for the first time and knowing they were the family for my son. They were with me through my whole pregnancy, and the pregnancy was a good experience. And they were actually there the day that my son was born. I remember watching them hold him for the first time, and then they walked out of the room to go with their other family. And I remember feeling so empty inside. Like I couldn't understand it. You know, nobody talked about trauma. I had never even considered getting a therapist. I was used to just powering through. And I thought, I'll just go back to work. I'll be okay if I just go back to work. But I wasn't okay. Like that emptiness that I felt, I didn't have anyone to talk about it with. And this family who adopted my son would reach out to me, and I felt like it just I could not process all of that. It was too much for me. The doctor had written me a prescription for Percocet, which is a narcotic pain pill. I used all of those and became addicted. I started looking for more. They would prescribe them for headaches and things back then, and then looking for more, and eventually became addicted to street drugs. Like I couldn't find what I needed, and I just kept thinking, I just need more. I just need more, and everything will be okay. And I lost my job. My life became much worse. My parents were pretty much raising my two kids at that point. And I remember coming home late one night, and my oldest son was 8 years old, and he was standing by a window with my mom, crying, waiting for me. And I remember walking in the house, and my mom looked at me and she's like, Portia, what would it take for you to change your life? All this little boy cares about is you. And if that's not enough for you, whatever would be? And I remember I grabbed my son and I walked downstairs and I just laid on the floor and I sobbed and I just begged God, please take this from me. I'm so tired of living like this. And my little boy, he's still the sweetest. He's 36 now, but he came over and he goes, Mom, don't be sad. It's okay, Mom. It's going to be okay. And I said, Jace, I am such an ugly person. And he goes, No, Mom. Mom, you're beautiful. Come look in the mirror. Come see, Mom, you're beautiful. Sweet little boy. And I knew, I said, I will do anything to change my life. And the next morning I walked up and I said, Dad, I need help. And he goes, Well, I already tried to help you. I can't help you. I don't even know what to do for you. My dad's just like, You're on your own. And he pointed me across the street to their LDS bishop, who who's a great man. He actually just reached out to me on social media and like he was so supportive of me. He's like, Portia, I love seeing all the good things you're doing. But at that point, I was a mess. And the thing that I loved about that man was that he was honest with me. Like, I went to his house. I said, I need help. I'm addicted to drugs. I don't know what to do. He did a couple of things. He invited someone over to share their story who could give me some hope. He made me some promises that if I started to live a more principle centered life, that I would be successful. And he said, Portia, you're very selfish. And he basically explained to me that if I wanted to have some happiness, I needed to learn how to live differently. And I have learned from that experience to be grateful for people that will tell you the truth because he cared about me. He was in my corner, right? And I think often we think we're supposed to make someone feel better, but I knew that he cared about me, but he was also willing to point some things out that I needed to work on. So so that was,
Yeah,
I mean, it was hope. It was truth, and it was really hard too. I'm not going to lie, man. That was like, I remember thinking on a daily basis, coming back from my addiction would be the hardest thing I'd ever have to do, which it totally wasn't. I've had to do so many hard things in my life. But at that point, my little 26-year-old self that is just every day I'm going to a 12-step meeting, I'm showing up for my kids, and I'm walking away from all the people and the places and the things that I had been around with my addiction. And I just kept on moving forward. And I remember that guy, he told me, he said, Portia, if you do these things, your whole life will change. And I was so desperate for a whole life change. What I had going for me is that I did not trust my own thinking anymore. Like, I had tried all my best things to get better and it wasn't working. So I listened to him and did what he said, and my whole life changed. So it was crazy. Yeah.
that is, and what you said before too, I see it all the time with the kids too, and I've fallen into this too. If I just had, and then say something, and then once I get there, it's like, okay, now if I just had, and then it's step after step after step, right? And it's,
Right.
oh, now I just need this, I just need this,
Right.
and exactly what you said about the truth telling. People need to be told the truth. I know there's a sensitivity nowadays where no,
Right.
you have to justify whatever someone says, right? Just so that they feel good about themselves. It doesn't help anybody. It,
No.
it You really have to tell them straight up. So having your bishop tell you straight up, hey, you need to do this. I mean, how did your mindset change with that?
Yeah. It was really powerful for me. And he was smart because he said, why do you think you've done all of these things, Portia? He let me come to this on my own, and I kept coming back and I said, well, probably because I didn't have any rules or boundaries. It was my mom. Keep thinking about it. It was my dad. It was my ex-husband. It was, and then one day, it took me a few months, I said to him, I know why I did all those things, because I wanted to. It was my choice. And he's like, yes. He allowed me to come to that. He told me, Portia, you're very selfish. I was making excuses for everything in my life, and nobody's happy when they're selfish. So if you sit and make someone feel good when they're being selfish, how are you helping that person? That's the trick. You've got to be honest with people. I work with youth now, and they know how deeply I care for them, but I'm very honest with them too. And you can do that when you have built that trust with the person. And he did with me. He was very honest with me, and I'm so grateful for that. I learned lessons that I would need for the rest of my life. And I didn't, obviously, I ended up in prison, so there's more to the story, but those principles that he taught me were so valuable. And, you know, during this time, I wasn't looking anymore for that thing outside myself to fix me. I was looking for what I could do that was within my circle of influence. I had a schedule. I got up early in the morning. I got a job. I showed up at work. I told my kids I would do something. I did it. I just started keeping my word with myself and everybody else. And then I ended up meeting my husband. I wasn't looking for him to fix me. And I still have no idea how I tricked him into marrying me. Like I'm still trying to figure that out because I told Chad the first date we went on, I was like, Chad, what scares you the most about me? And he's like, Portia, everything about you scares me. Like, which is so valid. So valid. Like, I am so scary. I get it. Like, my crazy life. And he's just a very grounded, patient, humble person. He's just a good man, you know? And he had just graduated college. He'd been on an LDS mission. And I mean, we both just say, how the heck did we end up together? Like, it doesn't make any sense, you know? But we did. We ended up getting married, and he adopted my two children. And, we started to build a new life. Yeah. I actually started my own photography business. What I have going for me is I'm a really hard worker, like really hard. Like, I will work from 4 in the morning till midnight every day if I have to. I know how to grind things out. And so I was working for my uncle. I started my own company. I had another bit, like I was working, trying to build something. And um, after we got married, I have two kids in elementary school. We had our first baby together. My company started to really boom. And then Chad was also working. And then I did what I always do. I had another kid like 18 months after the first kid. So we have these two little kids. And my business grew to about 200 weddings a year. Like, anyone out there that understands photography would know that's insane because I'm doing an engagement and a bridal and a wedding and a reception for each of these weddings. And I had employees. My house had been turned into a studio at this point, and I had, other people working for me. I had a nanny coming to the house to watch kids, and it made sense for me to build another home. Either I had to move into a studio, like a studio location, or I needed to build a home that could accommodate my business. And so we did that. We started building a home, and I had 4.5 years sober, and my back went out, and I relapsed on prescription drugs. And so I remember being scared because I knew, my addiction just takes me to dark places. But I felt like I'm on top of it. Like, I'm active in the church, I'm running my business. And really, part of it was when I use drugs, like, I feel like I can do more, right? Like, I trick myself. I know this about myself. I cannot use one half of a pain pill. Like, it changes my brain. And so I'm in denial. Like, I'm thinking, okay, I got this. I can do this. I can keep all the balls in the air. And I remember the real estate market was going crazy at that point in time. Like, a lot of our neighbors were building spec homes, lots were going up fast. My parents had kind of been real estate investors. They bought a new house every 2 years and would upgrade. And so I thought, maybe what I'll do is I'll start investing in real estate and I won't have to work so hard as a photographer. I'll pay off our house. I'll be in a situation where I can be home with my kids more. Like, I just had this plan. And all my plans always include more. So I'm going to just do
Yep.
one more thing, and it gets worse for me when I'm in my addiction. So I ended up investing. At first, I was just buying lots and flipping them, but I started investing in what at the time was called an equity deal, where you buy a home, borrow more than it's worth from the bank and invest it in something else. And I just became kind of a go-to person in Utah County, where people who were investors were looking for these types of homes, and I was locking them up and kind of facilitating the deal. And I heard that I was under federal investigation for this. And I remember thinking, I can't go to prison. What are they talking about? Like, that's impossible, you know? Like, you got the wrong person here. Because I've worked too hard just to get to where I am. Like, I've already like, I could lose everything, and they don't have any idea how hard I've worked to just get where I am. Like, my kids have a father. I'm married. I moved past all that. Come on, guys. Like, just go away. you know, I'll give you whatever money back you want. Just go away. Well, the feds don't work like that. Like, it does, and what I should have done looking back is that I should have just said, I made a mistake. How do I make it right? Like, I have absolutely learned making a mistake is one thing, but denying the mistake makes the mistake way worse. You probably see this with your youth in the home, right? Like, just own it. Just own it and let's move past
Yeah.
it. But that's not what I did. And I just made a lot of excuses, and I pointed to people that I thought were doing a lot worse. I pointed to the banks and everybody else, and I said, "Hey, we're all guilty. Why me? Why are you picking on me?" And I ended up dragging that whole process out a lot longer. And by the time I walked into a federal courthouse in 2015, I had made everybody mad. I'd made the FBI mad, I'd made the judge mad, the prosecutor mad, and my range was 0 to 7 years. I didn't have a criminal history. And I think before I walked into the courtroom, I thought maybe I would get a year, maybe I get 6 months, maybe I would get, or probation. Like, I was in such denial about the whole thing. And I remembered the day that I walked into the courtroom, sitting down, and I could feel the weight of the situation right then. I was like, oh my heck, he's going to give me the maximum sentence. Like, and I've done this to myself. It was such a shocking experience for me. I'm looking at my husband and kids and thinking, what have I done? Like, it became so real that day for me. And I'll never forget that day. So,
Yeah, and you said before, like, I had to own it, right?
mhm,
And my youth at my school, we do have a saying over there. Every time someone does something or they get in trouble, right? We had a student just, I think it was 6 months ago, picked up a desk, threw it at another student because that student made him mad. He
right,
picked up the desk and chucked it across the room, and he went
right,
out, punched in lockers, and I took him out. We went on a walk, and I went through our 4 steps that we go through everyone, right? And you probably experienced this with all this. We always tell kids, hey, own it. You made a mistake. It's all right. Everyone makes mistakes. That's not the problem, right?
right,
Second thing is fix it. How do I fix it? What do I have to do? Right. So in
right.
his
How do I
case,
make it right? Right.
yeah, apologize. And then we say, hey, learn from it. Why did you do that? What led to it? Why did you react that way? And we get them to articulate those questions. And then we say, move on. Those are the 4 steps we always do. And I learned that from someone else at a conference. So I can't take credit for that. Right. But,
It's really
but
good. Yeah, it's really
yeah,
good.
it works so well. And so it's totally in that situation with you where it's like, I did something. No, it's the judge's fault. It's the bank's fault. No, we're all in this together. Why me? Right.
Right.
And then as you're in federal court, you're realizing, oh man,
It's
this
me.
is this is worse than I thought.
Right.
And so you went to court. Your family's there. Judge is pissed off at
I'm
you.
just
You say
mad.
everyone's mad. So what happened with there? What happened with the sentencing, and what did they
Yeah, so
decide
I
for you?
remember it was such a bizarre feeling. Anyone that's been in a courtroom would know, like, it is a very sterile place. It's not like the rest of life you can navigate with maybe some of your people skills. Not a courtroom. There's no people skills involved. And I'm listening to the judge or the prosecutor and my lawyer go back and forth, and it's very surreal for me. I'm like, are they talking about me? It was so surreal. Like every bad thing you've ever done and then some. And I'm like, that's not me, is it? But I remember the judge saying, Miss Louder, do you have anything you want to say? And I stood up and I said, Your Honor, I am just so sorry. I'm so sorry that I've hurt my family, my community, and I probably deserve what you're going to do today. And really, I just would ask for mercy for my family, which I didn't know what that even meant. I just felt so bad. And he said, Miss Louder, I'm sentencing you to 84 months in federal prison, which is 7 years. And he said, you will be a mother again someday. And that stuck with me because I remember thinking, he cannot take that from me. Like, I can be a mother in prison. Like, I have to find a way to heal my family. You know what I mean? Like, you might be able to change my location, but you can't change my heart and my soul. And I remember there was almost this feeling also of, well, you just hit me with the worst thing you could, and I'm still standing. So I might be okay. You know what I mean? But then he said, marshals take her into custody. And that wasn't something that we were prepared for. Usually, with a white collar charge like this, I had been on pretrial release. I would get time to say goodbye and I would be able to go. My husband would take me to prison. And that's when things got kind of shaky for me. I said, Your Honor, why would you want to do that to me? And I remember my lawyer saying, she needs some time, Your Honor. Even the prosecutor was like, Your Honor, we're not asking for that. It was kind of like the judge was like, I am so done with her. Get her out of my courtroom, you know? What happened though was my husband stood up at the podium and he was crying. He handed our youngest daughter to our oldest daughter and he said, Your Honor, please don't do that to her today. She needs time to say goodbye to our kids to get through this. And I remember that being one of the more tender moments of my life because of what I had put Chad through. when I turned around and looked at him and I thought, we're going to get through this together. Like I went from feeling as weak and as low as I could to feeling very loved and valued, even in that situation. And I knew I had a lot of work to do to come back from that, but there was a feeling of relief too. I think the sentence, it was like, okay, let it begin. I remember leaving the courthouse. He gave me 8 weeks to say goodbye. And when I left the courthouse, Chad and I were together. Our older kids took our younger kids. I couldn't even speak. I was speechless, which is kind of odd for me. I'm a chatty person. But Chad kept going, "Are you okay?" And I just couldn't get the words out. And it was a combination of feeling like I must be such a terrible person. Like my whole country just sentenced me to the maximum sentence. I felt so low. And also, how could I have been so foolish to have traded something as valuable as time for something as useless as money? It just seems so clear and obvious that I had sold my integrity for nothing. And it took me a while to be able to even communicate. Like when we got home, we were really fortunate. We have such an awesome community and support system. We are active members of the LDS Church, and our bishop and stake president showed up at our house to give us a priesthood blessing. Like our neighbors came and just said, "What can we do to support you? How can we help your kids?" I, yeah, it was really cool. We were so blessed. And so we ended up that 8 weeks. I remember the next morning I drove my son to school and I cried the whole morning. And he was like, "Mom, it's okay. It's going to be okay." And I said, "Jackson, how could I have missed something as beautiful as driving you to school? Like, I never understood everything I had. And the most important thing, and I gave it away for nothing. I look back at that time. I wish I would have known more how to support my kids and prepare them, but we all were just so broken. Like, man, I am so proud of my kids for getting through this because they're amazing. Like I don't even know how we all did it. I do know. I know what had to happen for us to pass through it, but at that point in time, we just mourned it. We tried to prepare and 8 weeks later, I said goodbye to my kids. He drove me 14 hours to a prison in Dublin, California, which is just outside of Oakland. They don't have federal prisons in Utah, so that was the closest prison. And I walked into a federal prison with 1,000 women, and I was devastated. There aren't words to describe that because you walk in, the minute they slam that door, you are in a completely different world. And that world doesn't include all the light and support of the community. And it just felt devastating to me. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're in. Once the door slams, you're in. and
It's odd
and
because
so
yeah, I go to prisons. You work in that environment. It feels
yeah.
completely different when you leave. But when I was there, it was just a complete cutoff from the outside world. And
Yeah, your choice is gone. You can't leave, right? So you
right,
volunteer and you go and I know you speak a lot to tons of places, right? You go to the MTC with the LDS church, you go to people's churches, you go speak at schools, you've come to our school multiple times,
right.
and you have that freedom to go in and out, but now you're in prison and you
Yeah,
can't leave, right? You're under their jurisdiction and their laws. And so
yeah.
during your time in prison, what was going through your mind like throughout the 7 years? And you served the full 7 years,
No, I
correct?
served
Or
5. I served 5. I got a year of good
five?
time, and then I got a year off um, for a program that I did. You know, I had some experiences that were key for me to survive that the way that I did. The first one was after about 3 days, I wouldn't even get out of my cell. Like I was so brokenhearted. And I said, I think probably the most important prayer I've ever said, which was, God, I have failed everyone in my life and I'm in the deepest hole right now and I can't see my way out of it. I just need to know who I am to you. And sitting in federal prison, I remember feeling the most incredible amount of love I've ever felt in my life. I felt completely known and understood. Now, I do not know why I had to be at such a low point, but I know this that when we are weak and we need to know our worth, ask. Because what I felt was a complete connection and understanding of our worth. And it didn't just change me, it changed the way I saw everyone else in prison. Like I could see how valued and loved they all were. So that was and I often was able to go sit under a tree and I poured my heart out. I mean, my heart was broken, but I also felt this incredible amount of love and knowing that I had an important purpose on this earth. And here's what I learned that you can do really hard things when you know who you are, that it is fundamental for us to understand who we are. And we are much deeper and more valued than any role or title that this world can give us. So, I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking if I go to prison, I'm a total failure. How do you come back from that? Like, I am a member of the LDS church and I'm a mother and I'm a photographer. What's my community going to think? Well, this moment tells me right now, none of that matters. I am so loved and valued, and it's way deeper than any of that garbage. Like, it's not garbage, but like I can transform. I can come back from this. I have an important purpose on this despite these mistakes. It was really hard, Steve. Like 5 years away from my kids, I watched my children grow up without me. My first visit when they came out to see me, it had been 4 months. And I remember one of my coworkers telling me, she's like, "Hey, Louder, it's going to break your heart when they leave. Be prepared for that. I know you're excited to see your family, but they're going to come and you're going to feel like yourself again. And when they leave, they're going to take that piece of them with them, and you will grieve it. So I just want you to know you can come talk to me if you're struggling." And I'm thinking, I already came to prison. I already had my heart broken. I can handle it. So my husband and my kids come in. We spend 2 days together. They go at night, and then they can come during the day to visiting. And then on the last day, they say inmates to the left, family to the right. My little girl is 7 years old and she starts to cry. And then my husband starts to cry. And then they walk across the room, and I'm standing there physically sick, watching my little girl cry for me. And I'm trying to play this little game. I'm like, "I love you, CJ. It's going to be okay." And then they walk out, and I'm standing there for more than an hour waiting to be strip searched so I can go back to my cell. And I remember feeling this level of sickness that I honestly can't even describe. Like when I got back to my cell, I laid in my bunk and I curled up and sobbed like a baby. I thought, I can't breathe. And my spunky had been in visiting that day, and she walked in the room and she throws her arms around me and she goes, "I am so sorry." She goes, I just need to tell you what I saw today." She goes, "Your family loves you so much. You should see the way they look at you. You're their world." She goes, "I can't imagine how this hurts for you." And then she walked out. And it took me a long time to recover from that. But what I learned was these women were kind. We supported each other. I did not walk alone in prison. And the whole stereotype of everyone's so mean and bad and beating each other, that's not what I experienced. And you probably see the same thing with these kids. Even though they got these tough exterior, a lot of times they'll show such tenderness and support for each other. And that's what I experienced. But after that, I thought, I don't know if I can see my family again. It was heartbreaking. And then I got transferred to Minnesota. It was like once a year. Once a year they would come because financially, my poor husband's trying to rebuild. He doesn't have any money, and he's trying to raise kids. And every time they came, they were 6 inches taller. They're teenagers. They're grown up. And here was the key moment for me. I'd been locked up for 2 years. They came out to see me, and my kids were struggling. My son Jackson had a chip on his shoulder. So he had taken a vape to school and dropped it. And the teacher took him down to the principal, and the principal told him, "Jackson, I just don't want you to turn out like your mom," which, isn't the smartest
Oh.
thing to say. That's what he says. And Jackson tells him to F off. And so they got
Well deserved too. I mean, I would never say that to a
you don't
student
want to say
as a
that.
principal. No, that was not a good thing for him. That's not his business. That's not his place.
No, it
I
was
to be justified. If I said that to a student, and they said "f off," I'd be like, "Hey, that's on me. I should not have said that." So I
but you're
as
fairly,
yeah,
yeah.
as a principal, I totally agree with your son on that one.
Well, but what I noticed was there's my son who's feeling very angry, and my daughter who's completely depressed. And I looked at Jackson and I said, "Jackson, what's going on?" I said, "Does anyone ever talk to you about how you're feeling?" He's like, "Nobody would dare talk to me, Mom." And I said, "Jackson, this wasn't your principal. This wasn't the judge. This was me." I said, "I don't want you to turn out like me either. I don't want you to be in prison someday." I go, "You have to recognize that I am the one that did this to our family. And you need to tell me how I hurt you because it was me. It wasn't your principal." And boys never want to tell their moms how we hurt them, but he's just like, "Mom, I love you. I know you didn't mean to do it." And my daughter, when I looked at her and I said, Sadie, this is me. She goes, Mom, I don't even want to talk to you again. I'm so tired of this. Yeah, it was really hard. I remember going back to my bunk and I was on my knees that whole night begging God to take care of my kids. And I remember imagining Sadie, who was 14 at the time, who was so depressed and struggling. And I remembered her as a little girl, and she was this happy, joyful little barefoot kid that loved to be out in the sun. And I started imagining her someday as an older person. Like we would get past this. I would see her, that happy girl again, that had that joy in her life. And I did a lot of visualization when I was in prison. And I did a lot of praying and I wrote my goals and I imagined that we could build something new as a family based on truth. But it started right there with me looking at them and saying, you cannot blame the system, because what happens to kids that think that their parents were done dirty by the system, they grow up and end up in the system, right? Like that's how it goes. I mean, of course they have the criminal code. We don't ever talk to the cops because the cops are the enemy. And I understand that, right? But I didn't want that for my kids. And it was challenging because I had my own emotional trauma from dealing with the FBI and the judge and everyone else. But I had to say, it's more important that we heal. I need to own this. This was me. Like that's where the power lies for my family to move forward. And it was a real turning point for me. When I started owning my life, it really opened space inside me to imagine something new. It really did. And I didn't know what it was. I mean, I went to prison at 43. I I was scared. I mean, who am I going to be when I get home? What's my career going to be like? How do you come back from that, you know? But what I tell people who are in prison is I'm like, do the next right thing. Like start building your integrity right where you are. Don't worry about the job. That will show up for you if you become the person worthy of the job. Like right now where you are, you have the ability to transform your life. That's within all of our control. We can start to live principle-centered lives, and by doing that, we prepare ourselves for what will show up for us. And that's what I did. I started living, this sounds crazy, but in prison, I was living a very financially responsible life. Like my sister would send me $300 a month, but I would only buy what I absolutely needed on the commissary list. I started thinking long term and started preparing myself with the skills that when I came home would really serve me well. And I was able to get a job when I came home. I was able to start to build something. But at this point, I also started looking for ways to serve. Like I realized I have so much support out there. How can I now turn around and provide some support to these women that I love so much, you know? And I also kind of had this feeling that if I can show up for these people, people will show up for my kids out there. Like I just got to do what I can in the situation that I'm in. I've got to become the best version of myself. That's the best thing I can do for my kids. And my kids will tell people this. My daughter, especially my older daughter, she's like, it changed everything when mom started to take ownership. Like when mom was in prison and mom started saying, I'm going to make the very best of this time. And she quit grieving. Because I did. I grieved the first 2 years. Like I wanted the life I used to have. I grieved for that life. But when I started progressing and moving forward and just showing up where I was and building something new, my kids were able to progress and move forward too. And I want to share, like, I mean, there's obviously more to this experience, but I had this beautiful experience with when I got home from prison. My daughter, who told me she didn't want to talk to me ever again, was still pretty mad at me. She had a right to be. I mean, it takes a long time to heal from that, right? And she was 17 and she was struggling going to school. And I came home and put down the hammer because my husband's the softie. And I'm like, you're going to school, you're gonna, and she said, you are not my mom. You did not raise me. And I said, yeah, those were hard conversations. And I said, well, regardless of how you feel about that, you still have to get up and go to school today, right? Like, regardless, like, I understand you're entitled to your feelings, but it's not going to change the outcome here. And but I've been home from prison for almost 6 years now. And I was off probation in December. And I want to go back and share kind of how the end of me leaving prison was, but I want to share this first. In December, I got off probation. It was like a 20-year process from the time this real estate stuff happened in 2005. I mean, it's a long process, right? Our older
Yeah.
kids were like, let's go to Hawaii, mom. Let's go do this family trip. So we went to Hawaii, and there was this moment where I was sitting on the beach, and that daughter, who I was so depressed at that time, was dancing, and she was so happy and joyful. And it was the moment that I envisioned through my whole prison sentence. It was like this full circle moment, And it was like this, I could see that everything I did mattered. You know, the work that I put in created this outcome. And that's what I would want your viewers to know. It's like, if you do the work today, it changes the outcome. It really does. Like, that could have been a completely different outcome. By the time I left prison, I felt really good about myself. Here I am in federal prison, and I never felt better. I looked in the mirror and really liked me because my integrity had been restored through my actions, through living those principles that I had really worked to hone and prepare myself to live. I was living them right where I was. And I remember the day that I walked out of prison, my husband was waiting with flowers. All the women on the compound came out cheering for me. We love you, Miss Portia, you know? And I have this box full of letters and pictures, and I've never felt richer in my life than that day, you know? And since I got home, my son that I placed for adoption reached out and wanted to get to know me. You've met him, Steve. Like, we've come to the school. He's amazing. My children are healing and growing, and I show up for them. I was at my grandson's ball game last night. I have a beautiful life. I feel like in some ways I'm 53 and this is the best part of my life. And that's available to anyone, no matter what they've been through, if they decide right where they are to do the next right thing. So,
Definitely. And it's funny. I've met David,
yeah.
but I've never met any of your other family, but I've met him
Oh,
twice
isn't
because he
that
does come
cute?
down with you. Yeah. And you and I have talked multiple times, but I've seen all the posts that you've made about family, and I've seen your family, right?
Yeah,
I've just never personally met them. But what's cool is, and for the viewers too, Portia has a lot of stories about prison. Go follow her on TikTok. Go follow her on Instagram. It's just Portia Louder.
yeah,
She does a great job telling different stories. She takes questions from people who comment, and she makes a video on it answering their questions. She talks about the difference between federal prison and state prison, but she goes through some details of experiences. So go check those out. We're not going to go into the details of those with this podcast, but
yeah,
really go look at them because she has some really good experiences that a lot of people might be struggling with or figuring out. And so I think it's something that you guys should see. But your story with David is great because for the viewers, David actually comes and records her sessions at our school, the assemblies.
yeah,
And he's the one who edits it and provided us videos so that we could post them and share them with other group homes too around the state. And your story with him is amazing. I
yeah.
love how so who reached out first? Did he reach out to you, or did you reach back out to him looking for him?
So, it was such a painful thing for me to place my son for adoption. And I felt like at that point in time, I was trying to come back from addiction. So I just put the pain in a box and set it aside so that I could keep moving forward. And while I was in prison, I did some programs, like some treatment programs. And I remember my therapist saying, Miss Lauder, are you willing to talk about your son that you placed for adoption? I said, I can't. And he said, I think you can. He said, I'm sure that that was so painful for you, but don't you want to remember the beauty of it? And I thought, what are you talking about? And I didn't understand what he meant, but I told him I would write a letter to my son. So I wrote this letter, and I have a book out too, and it's in the book that I wrote. And it just basically says, this is who I am, and where I am and what's going on in my life. So I sent that to his mother. She and I had been in touch over the years, and she gave it to David. And when I got home, she reached out and said, he really wants to meet you. He wants to get to know you. So we all went to lunch. And what I love so much about that is that I am in the best place for David to know me. Like, I'm in a place of strength where I can give him support. And his mom has told me, she said, your David meeting you has brought a lot of power into his life. Like, he always questioned. He knew he had parents that loved him. I wrote him a journal and everything when I placed him for adoption, but it's different knowing that you come from, like, where you came from, and he can look at me now and go, and she's a strength. Like, I have her DNA, that may not have always been the case at different times in my life. And so I don't know. I just think that God just works it all out for our good at the right time. And it really, what's amazing about David is I was a photographer, my whole life. That's my background. None of my other biological kids really have that gift, but David does. And he didn't even know I was a photographer, but he went into that, and he's an amazing videographer. That's his career. That's what he does. So it's beautiful, that connection.
Yeah, he does a great job. Every time you guys come down and talk to the kids, he does an amazing job. filming that and then providing us with the edited copy so that we can send that out right away. It's
Yeah.
great. Well,
Well,
that
and a
is
lot of your
awesome.
kiddos, probably a lot of your kids have gone through adoption or DCFS, foster care and stuff. So I think even having David come is kind of cool because it also shows that restoration that's possible, you know? So,
Yeah, and we do have a lot of students who are in DCFS. Oh, and not all the students at our school are incarcerated, right, for crimes or anything. Some of them are taken from their homes and placed in a group home while they try to find them a foster place or another
right,
place to live due to abuse or neglect or something.
right,
And it's really sad. And so we are their contact, right? We're the ones who are trying to help them learn and get through life while they go through this huge transition. So
gosh.
I think a lot of the kids, when you mention that he's your son, a lot of them kind of get that, you know,
They
that
do.
brightness in their eyes, and then you guys have also gone to the classrooms afterwards and talked to the kids, and I think a lot of them ask you about that, like, oh, how did you get this, or how did you feel, and they get pretty abrasive in their questions, like they get
Yeah,
pretty personal with you guys, like there's no boundaries, right?
I
And
know.
so it is a
That's
great
good.
story,
Yeah,
and having him come to the school has been amazing. And I think it actually adds to your story
right,
and your relationship to the viewers when David is there because it makes it real, right?
right, right.
And
Yeah.
so yeah. So Portia, thank you so much for your story. What are you doing now? Like what's life like now and how have
Yeah.
you rebounded after everything? And
You
congratulations on the probation. I did not know that you just got off.
I
I
know.
had no idea. I thought it was a long time ago.
Well, I should have been, but I actually allowed they would have kicked me off sooner, but there were some benefits for me being on probation, so I stayed on probation. But, thank you, though. Um, so when I got home, I went to work in drug treatment inpatient. You know, I literally started working at 13 bucks an hour, which I mean, I had as a photographer, I'd made, you know, thousands an hour. I mean, I
Yeah.
just it was like a complete start over. And so when I talk to people in prison, I'm like, go get a job, any job, and then show up and do your very best, keep your word, and you'll just progress. By the time they ended up shutting that treatment center down, but by the time I left, I think they were paying me about 50,000 a year. You know, they just I was worth it. I knew what I was worth when I got there. And the nice thing about it was I was able to write my books. I was working grave shifts. So I started writing like while I'm hanging out at the treatment center. So there were benefits to me to having that job at that time. Um, I had somebody else reach out to me and ask all my jobs, people have reached out and said, hey, will you come work for us? So just so you know, the company that I work for, that's I do mental health coaching for. I actually brought Manny over, and we started a program now. So we have people that are leaving prison, and it's booming. Like, and we're providing support. I work with the youth in that type of scenario too. I work in person with youth, and then Manny runs an online program with people leaving prison, and it's so cool. Like we're doing such amazing things. And then I also work for another company doing coaching that's virtual. And I love them both. They're great. And then I also I'm starting a podcast and I do a lot of speaking and yeah, like I have awesome goals and my life is driven a lot more by meaning and purpose. And the financial benefits are, you know, we're doing fine now. We're recovering. We still don't own a home. I don't know if we ever will with the way home prices are, but we're saving and living. Yeah, it's crazy, but we're doing well and our kids are doing well and we have a beautiful life. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And for those viewers, Manny is Manny Lopez, who partnered with Portia. He also comes down with Portia to assemblies. He's also SL Manny Boy on TikTok. He has a lot of great motivational messages. You should check him out. He's also going to be with me on a podcast in a few more days. So you'll see a full podcast with him also. Amazing story for him too. So
Yeah.
Portia, thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining me today. Go ahead and tell the viewers what your title of your books are because you have two of them out now,
Yeah. Yeah.
and our kids have read both of them. They love them. I mean,
Oh,
we have to put them away because they fight over who gets to have them next. So go ahead and tell the viewers what your title of your books are if
yeah.
anyone's interested in getting those.
Yeah. My first book is Living Louder, and it's really a lot about my prison journey. And then Born to Be Brave, it picks up when I got out of prison, but it also goes back and shares some of my younger years. And then it also wraps around. It has Manny's story and some of the people that I've met since I've gotten home from prison. My brother's story. Both of them are available on Amazon and Audible. And they're available for anyone that has family that's incarcerated. They're available on prison tablets now for free across the country on 1 million prison
That's
tablets,
cool.
which is so cool. Yeah, I love that. And also a lot of my videos are now getting uploaded to tablets. So it's like that's the most amazing thing that I can reach back and connect. Like when I was there, I loved the service work, but I get to continue to do that. And yeah, so they're there, and anyone can find me on. I have a website, portialouder.com. They can find me there or on any of the platforms, social media platforms. So
No, that's great. And I encourage anyone to go check out her story. Even if you don't buy the book, follow her on social media because she has a lot of inspirational stuff to say, which is really fun. I love watching all your videos as I scroll through and seeing your experiences. And some of those things you talk about on social media are things we didn't talk about today. And they're things that you don't talk about at the school when you come and
yeah.
talk to the kids. So it's a lot of stuff that I get to learn and say, oh, I did not know she went through that. Or I had no idea. And so it's a lot of fun for me to see that as I get to know you more and more. But thank you again so much, Portia. Guys, again, if you want to check out more with Portia, go follow her on TikTok or Instagram, see her stories. We will see you next time. Thank you, guys.
See. Yeah.